Rebirth. Toward the end of the Middle Ages, many European scholars and artists began questioning the attitudes and ideas of medieval society. Most of the philosophy, art, and literature in circulation during the Middle Ages focused on man's devotion to God. Europeans generally believed that an individual's duty was to serve God and to redeem the sins of society. Academic scholarship focused on theology, or the study of God. Painting served mainly religious purposes. The birth of the European Renaissance is marked by a shift in focus from God to man. In fact, the word Renaissance itself means rebirth. The entire period was characterized by the focus upon man and the society that man enjoyed living in. Renaissance thinkers argued that an individual's duty was to society. Furthermore, they believed that society was civilized rather than sinful. Scholars concentrated their studies on human accomplishments and cultures. They focused particularly on those of the ancient Greeks and Romans. Artists depicted the beauty and dignity of the human form. Gradually, the Renaissance spread throughout Western Europe. It left much intellectual and artistic inspiration in its wake. The Renaissance movement began in Italy during the early 14th century. The ruling classes of Italian cities Florence and Venice idealized, in the words of American poet Edgar Allan Poe, the glory that was Greece, the grandeur that was Rome. The admired cultures of ancient Greece and Rome are referred to as classical antiquity. The rulers of Florence and Venice, thus, encouraged the study of art and literature from Rome and Greece in an attempt to recreate classical antiquity within Italian society. Around the same time, humanism emerged as an intellectual movement. It was committed to the search for truth and morality based on the history and actions of humans. The humanists studied subjects such as literature and philosophy to better understand human nature and the problems of human society. They believed the ancient Greeks and Romans had mastered these subjects. Therefore, they studied the customs, laws, history, as well as the classical languages of ancient Greece and Rome. Studies of classical antiquity influenced the works of Renaissance writers and artists. In an attempt to imitate the literary styles of classical writings, Italian authors expressed ideas with descriptive accuracy and elegance. Furthermore, their works depicted human emotions and situations, which they considered more important to understanding human problems than spiritual or scientific knowledge. Similarly, painters and sculptors wished to portray human realities rather than religious meaning. Architectural design was also influenced by the Italian Renaissance. During the Middle Ages, architects designed huge cathedrals representing the glory of God. The architects of the Renaissance envisioned simple yet beautiful chapels and buildings as expressions of human power and dignity. The Renaissance spread from Italy to other European countries during the latter half of the 15th century. European merchants, bankers, diplomats, and especially scholars visiting Italy brought back with them humanist ideas and practices. European kings welcomed renowned artists and tutors of the Italian Renaissance. Renaissance art and literature outside of Italy, however, incorporated much more of the Gothic style of the late Middle Ages. This was because many of the remnants of classical antiquity were destroyed during the fall of the Western Roman Empire in the 400 CE. Furthermore, the Renaissance scholars of Northern and Western Europe were much more interested in applying humanist principles to Christian rather than classical literature. These scholars chiefly studied and rewrote the founding texts of the Christian religion. Such texts include the Bible and the letters of St. Paul. These scholars became known as the Christian humanists. Although the ideas of the European Renaissance greatly altered the values and expressions of many writers, artists, scholarly thinkers, and the nobility who supported them, they only gradually came to be accepted by the majority of the European public. Even by the time the Renaissance reached its peak in the late 1400s and early 1500s, only a small scholarly elite followed the principles of the movement. Nevertheless, the changes brought about by the European Renaissance gradually came to be adopted by future generations. They endure to this day. Scholars, for instance, still value the humanities as profound academic disciplines. Subjects in the humanities include music, art, literature, language, sociology, history, and the classics. Modern artists and writers study the works of Renaissance painters, sculptors, and artists to gain inspiration and to learn technique. Many historians mark the Renaissance as the beginning of the modern era of human history.